Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter. I'm Finley Cannon, and this week I'm joined by Jamie Castle, Adam Driscoll, and Lewis Jones as we discuss all things transfer window and Luton squad depth. There's no game this week, but we've got plenty to talk about. Jamie, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Good to be back. Had about 2 weeks off. It was a bit of a crazy end to the month with my birthday and then my girlfriend's birthday. So had a nice little trip to Edinburgh. But yeah, good to be back. Nice little break. I think we all need a break from football, which is weird to say after only 4 games of the season. But I'm hoping that the playing and sort of coaching staff are making the most of this little 2 week period.
And how are you doing, Adam?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Yeah, I've got a few more words for summarising last week in the window than I did after the QPR game, so it's probably very helpful considering we're on a podcast. But yeah, I'm good. I'm all good. Looking forward to getting your thoughts on the window and what's been going on really.
And making his second podcast appearance of the season, it's Lewis. How are you, Lewis?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks, mate. 2 appearances in a row. I don't know what's going on.
Before we get into things, I just wanted to get you to like, share, and subscribe the podcast on socials. Give us a follow or comment on YouTube. That's at Oak Road Hatter on socials and Oak Road Hatter on YouTube. And be sure to give us a rating on all your podcast listening platforms for audio only. We really appreciate all the support and it helps us to produce the best content for you guys. We'll get straight into things and we'll talk about the transfer window, which is obviously slammed shut last week. And it's fair to say it's been somewhat underwhelming for Luton fans. Whilst there was over 700 deals across the EFL, there was very few for Luton. So, Jamie, we'll go straight to you and we'll get you to run through the new arrivals we've got.
Yeah, sure. First of all, I was just having a slight grin because you used the cliche that is the window slammed shut. When I thought back to a tweet that I saw on deadline day that it actually doesn't slam; it just politely closes at 11 p.m. But for us, it seemed to have slammed shut about a week before, didn't it? Really, with those 3 transfers in a week, and it seems like that was the height of our window. I think, but I'm not sure how many players we brought in the end. Was it what, seven or so, 6 or 7? I think for me the highlight of that is probably Walters, right? And I think it's maybe a bit recency bias with regards to performances on the pitch, but just all round to bring in someone for. I mean, I'll say free, but with a little asterisk that it's obviously subject to compensation with Arsenal. 19-year-old, his ceiling certainly seems like it's going to be Premier League and maybe higher. Um, yeah, again, you don't want to overreact based on 4 games in a Luton shirt, but to have a 19-year-old playing at that level, um, you certainly think of like the England team in the next sort of few years if you can progress and get to the top flight. So to attract someone like that, I mean, you can see why Arsenal wanted to keep him at such a young age. Okay, there's no guarantees that he would break into their team, but who knows if they got him on a 2 or 3 year contract and loaned him to us for a season, then he'd be a very valuable asset. So for me, I think standout player to bring in. Clearly, McGuinness is the other standout one, right? Not necessarily based on profile or stature, but just from a fee pay perspective. And okay, yeah, a mistake against QPR. But obviously, I got confidence that he'll bounce back from that, and that there is a proper centre half in there. And then yeah, just around the fringes, you got Baptiste on a free. I think it's a very Luton signing, and I'm happy with that. Um, but yeah, I can't help but think there's probably a few holes in some of the sort of areas of the squad, which I'm sure we'll get into. So yeah, I guess picked 3 of my favourite transfers in Walters, Baptiste, and McGuinness. But yeah, I know there's a few others we brought in as well.
Yeah, and I'll just briefly go through those others. So obviously we also brought in on top of those three, we got Liam Walsh again on a free. We got Tom Krause, who we're yet to see play as he arrived already injured. Thank you, Mines. Um, and on the final day of the window, a minute before, as you mentioned, it politely closed. we signed Swedish midfielder who no one has ever seen play realistically, Lamin van Dabo. I think that's his name. I'm not sure. It could be pronounced completely differently, but he managed to get his foot stuck in the door as the window closed. But we won't be seeing him till January, so there's not much to say on him at the moment. It's had some promising stats by the looks of it. Is it AIK in? Is that right?
Yeah, in Sweden, in the Allsvenskan league, and I mean, yeah, I
Been
think you're quite.
practicing the pronunciation there.
I think it's all those years of FM really, sort of looking at the Nordic leagues for some nice wonder kids, and it seems like that's what we've been doing sort of in the off season. But yeah, I mean, you're quite right in saying none of us can say with our chests that we know exactly what sort of player he is or how good he's going to be. But all of the discourse from Swedish fans are very, very positive. I think a few of their fans are saying he's the Spanish Yaya Toure. So to me, that seems like that's a Paddy Ruddock replacement, and I'm not saying that Paddy Ruddock is the Congolese Toure, but he's certainly got that profile in terms of sort of being able to drive through midfield. So yeah, I will say it's exciting just because it's someone different. He's obviously of a good age. Go back to what Adam said previously in terms of a younger profile in midfield and trying to sort of de-age that midfield going forwards. But yeah, I think you've got to say that it's a positive signing.
And Adam, I'll go to you there. We'll just discuss a couple of those players that have come in sort of under the radar a bit, the likes of Liam Walsh and Tom Krause we're yet to see. What are your thoughts on obviously Walsh, who we have seen a bit of? He's yet to play any significant amount of time. And then we can also speak about Tom Krause in a bit. Obviously, he'll be playing hopefully come Millwall, maybe slightly after. But we'll start with Liam Walsh.
Yeah, Walsh. I'm, you know, he looks okay. He's a squad filler, isn't he? I can't. I don't think he's going to do anything particularly amazing or outstanding. If I'm being brutally honest, but I, I've spoken about him before when we were linked with him. We saw him on the telly, didn't we? Sitting between Nakamba and Jordan Clark, I think it was. Who I don't think they said a word to each other all night based on the language barrier. But yeah, I think he's a squad filler. I think he's going to be someone that Edwards brings on to try and get on the ball later in games and make something happen. Now, I'd hope that we're at a point later in the game where we don't necessarily need something to happen, unlike the first four games. So he's gonna be one to watch. Keep him fit, and he gives us something. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm not enamored by it. Let's put it that way.
I've actually been impressed by Walsh when we've seen him come on. I think he looks like he's got a bit more control of the game than many of our other midfielders. I'm not sure about you, Lewis.
Yeah, he looks very different to the others. I saw him in a QPR game. Obviously, we got a very brief cameo at Preston, but in the QPR game, his passing is very different to the likes of Nakamba, Kraus, Baptiste. He's more of the eye of the needle. He will put you through on goal, like with Elijah. Great ball into him. He just couldn't find the finish. And I think he offers something different, which is very good, especially with the the chances we're struggling to create at the moment.
Yeah, I agree there. It's something we've probably not got in that midfield. I'm not sure when we last had a player like him. Obviously, Barkley was more box to box in terms of what he did for us, but yeah, Walsh is a very diminutive figure, and it's difficult to see if he'd get in alongside Jordan Clark, but he offers something very different to the rest of our midfielders. I just wanted to move on to another midfielder we've brought in, and someone who came in with a bit of pedigree as well. In Shandon Baptiste, obviously, got quite a number of games for Brentford in a fairly long time. He arrived there from Oxford a number of years ago. What have your thoughts on Baptiste been so far, Jamie?
Very good. I think he's been yeah. I think he's been exactly what we need in that midfield. It seems like we're still trying to manage his minutes a little bit. I think the first few games he only managed to get to 60 or 70. But I think as the season progresses, he's going to show the quality that we probably needed to replace with Barkley. And just that bit of an older head, but it's not sort of like a super old head in the middle. So yeah, I've been really impressed with the signing, free transfer. I think, as you said, he was signed from Oxford quite a while ago, and there was a lot of promise in terms of his career at the top flight. And for one reason or another, whether that was sort of Brentford advancing too quickly or injuries at Brentford, he didn't quite hit the heights that maybe he promised. But I think he just provides a lot of balance in that midfield. I think for a lot of the comments that we've had on the midfield in terms of maybe too easy to pass through or not strong enough, I think that isn't because of Baptiste. I think it's, for me, it's more structurally and tactically rather than personnel in that middle in terms of Baptiste. So yeah, I think very positive on the signing, and I think he definitely gets into our first choice midfield for sure.
And you mentioned there it's not been his fault at times that our midfield's been too easy to pass through. Do you think someone like Nakamba or Kraus coming into the side alongside him, or maybe slightly deeper than him, would help that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you saw it in the cup game against QPR, right, where okay, he only got 45 minutes, but he just seemed to just add such a calmness and presence to that midfield that, I mean, for me, obviously excited to see him alongside Baptiste, but hopefully not just along him, but alongside someone else in the midfield three. I think structurally, Nakamba, Baptiste +1, be that Kraus or Clark or Walsh or maybe Zach Nelson in there. I think that would provide a lot more balance in the midfield. So yeah, I hope that Nakamba can get back fully fit quick, because. But I mean, just that first half of the cup game showed exactly why we missed him, not just this season but last season as well.
And carrying on with that midfield, obviously we've mentioned Kraus, but none of us have seen him play yet, unless someone is a big Secret Minds fan or they saw him play for someone like Schalke. German, quite a sizable midfielder and pretty dynamic defensive midfielder. What do you think he will add to our team, Adam? And do you think he goes straight in when he's fit, or is it one that will be eased in?
Um, I think. I mean, I would like to see him go straight in. I think he's on a year-long loan. We don't know what's going to happen beyond that. So to ease him in would seem a bit crazy to me. So I think he's here to play, and if he's fit, he'll come into the team. But from what I've seen on YouTube from those videos, like everyone else, he's that kind of that number six. He'll sit in front of the central defenders and sweep everything up. Also seems to have a bit of an eye for a forward pass as well, which I know we do struggle with sometimes in terms of moving the game into that next phase. So yeah, he looks good. He looks like he's got good pedigree. He's played a lot in the Bundesliga, and I think we get him fit and we keep him fit. I think we've got a very good midfielder there.
And the final player, Lewis, I just wanted to talk to you about. Obviously, it's the one that we spent. I mean, what was rumoured to be rising to around £10 million, but no one really knows how much. But Mark McGuinness, obviously central defender, 6'4" Irishman, Arsenal academy, and has looked. Well, he struggled against QPR, I would say, in the league game, but against Preston, he looked relatively comfortable despite the goal we conceded. What are your thoughts on him coming into the team, and how necessary do you think it was to bring in another central defender?
I think it goes without saying that we needed more in the central defensive area. We got Locks, Osho, Reece Burke, for all his qualities, as we all know, he's made of glass. So you can't really count on him. Anderson missed plenty of games last season, even the start of this season. So it was necessary. Look, I think it's hard to judge him on the two games we've seen. Preston didn't really offer anything going forward, but they somehow won the game. In QPR, the first half, I think he dominated Frey, and then the second half, tables turned and Frey dominated him. He's got a decent number of games at championship level, so you'd expect him to have at least some sort of pedigree. And generally, we don't spend money unless we think it's going to turn out to be at least a return on investment.
And yeah, you mentioned there that we generally don't spend money as a club, and I think the business in the window, or lack of business, and the lack of arrivals that have come in for a fee have really been something that have, I guess, underwhelmed fans across the board, really. Jamie, I know you've got plenty to say on Luton's business this window that you've made very, very obvious on social media at times, and I'd love to just find out from you where we've lacked in terms of investment and what your thoughts on the window as a whole.
Yeah, it's a really strange one because like we've spent money in a couple of places, right? So McGuinness, it seems like we have potentially broken a transfer fee for, and that on one side shows ambition, right? And then clearly we've brought in someone from further afield that we've clearly scouted in a lot of detail in Darbo. But it just seems strange from the wider lens, looking at the rest of the market as a whole. And I appreciate it's been a tough market. Clearly, clubs are asking for a bit more from us for their assets, but we just haven't seemed to have done what we did pre Premier League, and that is look at lower leagues and try and get some of the best players from those leagues. If you look at the likes of getting Morris from Barnsley, or getting Doughty from Stoke, for example, or just sort of like really looking at like maybe sort of the best of like the Copper League One and League Two players, and maybe not expect them to impact straight away, but see a potential future in a team. We've not even done that, right? And we're not talking spend big 8, 9, 10 million pound fees, but there's probably going to be players in that level that we could have got for 2, 3, 4 million. I mean, if you look at Sheffield United brought in Burrows from Peterborough, I'm not sure what that fee was in the end, correct me, but I don't think it was anything more than 2 or 3 million pounds. And you look at, we've got Alfie Doughty, who is quite clearly one of the best left wing backs at the level, but that's all we've got out on the left. And I know it didn't work out too well with Ryan Giles last year, and sort of Giles and Doughty pushing for that same position, but we quite clearly need depth there, and we just haven't spent it on the right players. And there's no way that Peterborough would have asked for more money from us than he would have done from Sheffield United. Like that would have been the fee that they would have asked. So why didn't we go out and do it? I'm just looking at the business that Burnley and Leeds and Sheffield United have done. I think they've been able to spend a bit of money on a few players, and it just seems a bit strange that we haven't. Is it an ambition thing? I don't know. Is it maybe being a bit nervous to start spending 20 million plus when we're not in the Premier League? I know we did 25 million last year. I don't know. It's something I've thought about over the last week or so. It's just, yeah, it's strange, and I would love to hear from the board, right? And I don't think it's as a byproduct of the fans' expectations, but when the board and the manager set the expectation that, look, we want to be fighting at the top end of the league and get promotion back to the top flight at the first attempt. And Rob Edwards saying in his first interview that there's money there for the right player if we need to strengthen somewhere. And to go into the season having only 23 registered players out of 25, and I know that's different, right? Because I think we've got 4 under-21s in there with Walters, Johnson, Nelson, and Horlick, but you've got 2 squad spaces in a 25-man squad, and there's quite clearly areas to the squad that we could strengthen. So yeah, and even the loan market, I think it's really interesting in the loan market, because we've got Kraus in on a loan from Mainz, but you've got the option to get up to 5 loans, and we've only got 1 out of 5. And there's all this talk about, our 1 year in the Premier League, we met a lot of people, we've made good friends with Premier League clubs, but there wasn't a single transfer, permanent or on loan, from a Premier League club. So you've not used your network at all with the Premier League club. And even on deadline day is known for a lot of Premier League loans to tap into the Championship, League One, League Two, and we weren't even in that market. And I know we may have been, obviously there was links with Tom Cannon, for example, and we may have been so focused on that we missed out. But I think that isn't a good enough excuse. You need to have plan A, B, C, and D sometimes. And if your plan A is Tom Cannon, but he chooses to go to Stoke rather than you, then you're also on the phone to plan B and plan C at the same time, knowing that there's 5 clubs in for Tom Cannon. So yeah, I think there's just a bit of a disconnect between what's coming out of the club with regards to we want to be at the top end of the championship. There's money to spend if we need to spend it, and also by the way, we've made some great friends with clubs in the Premier League. Like all these talks that Rob had with Klopp, and okay, no, I know he's left, but I know that there would have been some goodwill with Liverpool and that, and with City last year with Pep and how we dealt with Kabore. I mean, Liverpool and City have some pretty good youngsters in their academy. Why weren't we in the market for one of those? And I know I mentioned a few names earlier on that went to higher levels. I think Bajcetic went to Salzburg and Morton went somewhere else, I believe. But we quite clearly are above our level currently. But they've definitely got some strength. I mean, Borough brought in Ben Doak, for example, and you think, well, we lost Ogbene, who's a right-sided attacker. Ben Doak's a right-sided attacker. Like, where was our connection with Liverpool there to try and get Ben Doak on a loan? Okay, I think it makes sense to sell Ogbene for £8 million because I think it's a good fee for him. So I think that in isolation is a good move. But then where's the replacement? You could have got Ben Doak on a 1-year loan. And whether there's conversation that it might limit Nelson's minutes. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty big topic, and I think I could go on for hours of various things, but yeah, that was a bit of a brain dump of an answer. Yeah, I'd love to hear from Sweet and the board really.
And I'd just like to ask Lewis about something you mentioned there. Obviously, the supposed goodwill we had with the likes of Liverpool and Manchester City, even Arsenal. Obviously, we loaned Lokonga from last season, who had his injury troubles, but he's had those injury troubles everywhere, including now at Sevilla. I just wanted to expand on something Jamie said there about Middlesbrough, who brought in Ben Doak on loan, but also signed Micah Hamilton from Manchester City. Do you, Lewis, agree that we didn't really show enough ambition in terms of using those relationships we built with the Premier League sides and trying to get some of their loan players?
I think to an extent, yes. Like you look at it, we lost Ogbene, Townsend, and Only Dinma. Only Dinma's outskirts, but there's 3 right-sided players there, and we brought in Walters. So you're already 2 down in that area. Obviously, Nelson's come in and he's shown his quality. There's no doubt about that. But from what I saw from the youth team, he is more of a number 10. He can comfortably play right wing, as we've seen. But I think you look at like left wing back, for example, where Doughty is. Surely a Premier League side are going to let us have a left wing back or that kind of player on loan to develop, even just by playing alongside Doughty, watching him in training, looking how he puts the ball into the box, his set piece threat, and develop their player. Even if it doesn't really go anywhere, he might play 10 games for us. But if Doughty gets injured, the whole team needs a reshuffle. Bell can play left wing back, but he's not a left wing back. I think there's areas in the squad that we could have developed using loans, which we decided against. I'm not sure if that's out of the NJ school of transfers where he doesn't like getting loans in. That might be the case with Rob Edwards as well. He likes to have his own team, it be settled. But I did think we could have made more use of that market. Yeah.
And I'll just fire a couple of names there that in that left wing back position potentially. Someone like Wilson Ebrand from Manchester City, is he someone you would have taken on loan just to have there's that depth in that area?
It's a difficult one because he has played a lot of games at championship level and he would have been second choice. So would a Premier League side look at that and go, is that worth it? To be fair, I don't think they would because he wouldn't be first choice. At most, it'd be cup games unless Doughty gets injured.
And another one I was potentially thinking of there, who's a former Luton Academy, who's just gone to Sao Paulo, if I remember right, is Jamal Lewis from Newcastle. I just thought that was an interesting move for him, and I think maybe it was an avenue we could have looked down as well. I'm not sure what you think.
My mate, I shouldn't be saying this on Luton podcast, but is a Watford fan, and Jamal Lewis did go there, and from all accounts from him, he wasn't impressed by him. So I can only go off what he said. So to be fair, I would have steered clear.
We'll move on from obviously the talking loans from big clubs and talk a bit about the players that have left the club, and specifically the players who were in the first team last season, playing regularly in the first team. So Osho, Barkley, and Ogbene, Adam. Where do you think obviously Jamie's mentioned it there briefly, that when Lewis has as well, that right wing position with Ogbene, he left quite late and we didn't really we weren't at any point linked with anyone to replace him. Do you think there was a lack of, I guess, communication or, I don't know, even efficiency with the board to actually get someone in straight away? Because in the past, obviously we're quite well known as a club for someone leaves, we immediately replace them with someone either similar or slightly different in the same area. But there didn't seem to be that in this window.
No, there wasn't, was there? And I think part of the frustration from my perspective is, just because you've got a good player in a position doesn't mean you don't need to strengthen and give them competition. We've spoken about Doughty in the left back position, and then obviously when you lose someone, you've got the natural replacement. You've got the opportunity for someone to step up. With Ogbene, I think, as Jamie said, the deal was good. 8 million for Ogbene is a good deal. He was, a free agent last year. But we had an opportunity, as soon as this Premier League season finished, in my mind, we had a massive opportunity to go and strengthen the squad on top of what we had or what we've got, with the money, with the advantage, and we didn't do that. And then you lose players late in the window, and there was a lot of panic about losing Mengi, and you think, yeah, we've got McGuinness, but why does it have to be one in, one out? And I think we've missed that massive opportunity this summer, in that regard. And excuse me, just touching on the kind of financial situation this summer, everyone knows, or most people know, that we've got about 40 million, 43 million in the first season parachute payments. We've received about 17 or 18 million across 3 or 4 sales. And really, when you look at it, the McGuinness up front is known to be about 5 or 6 mil, and Darbo maybe 3 up front. So in reality, we've profited about 10 million, and we've received about 40 million. And it doesn't sit right with me that we've just not been ambitious in the window. We've not done our business early. We've not gone ahead and got some names that have been mentioned already for what you'd probably say are quite nominal fees. And I share a lot of thoughts, that Jamie's alluded to already. And the frustration, really, I have a lot of frustration when I look back at the window. And yeah, probably could ramble on for a lot longer on my frustrations as well.
I think just to add to that, I think maybe a bit too early to talk about January, right? But we all know it's a pretty tough window anyway, and a lot of talk about from Gary Sweet saying that actually the early part of the summer was really tough because they're asking for high fees and they know we've got Premier League money, etc. Well, you're going to get the same and some in January, right? If we're 8th, 9th, 10th, and we want to try and bring in a couple of players to go for promotion, suddenly a 5 million valuation is going to be 8 or 9, and you think, well, are you really going to pay that? So sometimes you just need to swallow your pride a little bit and only pay £1 or £2 million more than what you feel like he's worth. Than someone in January you could be asked double for. So yeah, I think sometimes what we forget is that the football pyramid is a food chain, and by you spending money, you're obviously giving money down to lower leagues. And so what if you deem a player is worth 5 million, but they're asking 7 million from you? Okay, 2 million is sometimes a little bit too much to overpay for a player. But you must be bringing in a player with a view that actually he's going to develop, get you to the Premier League, and maybe be worth 15, 20 million in a couple of years' time. So to an extent, so what if you overpay by £2 million? And I just think we've almost put ourselves in a dark alley and in a corner for January, because if we need to strengthen based on how the next few months go, it's going to be a very, very tough window. And I can see a similar outcome where we're a bit static, maybe get a loan or two, probably don't spend a lot, and there's a risk that our season may peter out if the first half of the season carries on and we struggle.
I think another point to touch on with our incomings is the amount of players we brought in central midfield. We brought in Walsh, Baptiste, Kraus, and also now Dabo, who will be with us in January. That's a lot of players when you also consider we've got Pelly, Nakamba, and Clark. And if we're playing a two-man midfield, and I know we'll touch on this later in the episode, that's about 8 players for 2 positions. So you look at it and go, could that money have been spent elsewhere? Like the left wing back, like the left centre back, right wing. It's just we seem to now be overstocked in one area and been spending our fees there. Maybe Edwards didn't quite find what he wanted, which is why we didn't bring him in. But I'm now also slightly worried about the amount of central midfielders we have for the money we spent, which could have been spent elsewhere.
I think one of the other things I don't quite understand is, uh, you know, in June it was said that we did a lot of our business last summer and we wouldn't be doing much. I think, something to that effect. Yet we signed, 4 players in the last 10 days of the window, and we tried for a fifth in Cannon. So that doesn't add up. If you're happy with what you've got, bearing in mind we knew who we lost. I don't understand why we're signing 4 players in the last 10 days and trying for a fifth player. It just doesn't make any sense. And I feel like they've realised the mistake maybe, and it's been too late. And I guess time will tell in terms of the depth and the quality that we do have. The other thing I want to touch on just before we kind of, I guess, move on is I've seen David Wilkinson came out last week saying we won't get sucked in. Um, I don't know what you guys think on that, but my first thought was, sucked into what? We're at a financial advantage for the first time in 30 years of me watching Luton. Like,
Ever.
yeah, ever. So I'm not saying you got to go out and spend £15 million on like Morgan Whittaker. I'd have loved him, but I don't. I get it. Don't do that. But what are you not trying to get sucked into? There's players that have gone, and we've already mentioned a few of them. We've got Cooper, the keeper, has gone to Sheffield United for 2 mil. Burrows went for 3 mil. Scott Twine went to Bristol City for 3 mil. Redoni went for 5 mil. They're not massive fees, and there are a lot of players that would immediately add quality, whether it's like defensive stability or attacking creativity. And we haven't stretched ourselves anywhere near enough, and I think yeah, I hate to say it, but I think it's a bit of a lack of ambition, really.
And that, yeah, you touched on my sort of final point in terms of the business that has and hasn't been done. Do you think that the club has, or the board have failed to realise that maybe fees for players that they would have liked to have bought a few years ago have inflated quite significantly since then? And they would do, if they were to do the business, they would need to bite the bullet and pay more than they expected. I'll go back to you on that, Adam.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, feels like we're still shopping at home bargains, doesn't it? As soon as the final whistle went at Wembley, that closed the whole chapter of where we've come from, and people still harp on about, well, look at where we were. Great, but we closed that book as soon as that penalty got missed, ironically by Darvo. You know, we needed to realise where we were going, and when we came back, if it was one season or two, that we need to spend more money to compete and be where we want to be. And that's my frustration. I think we've completely misunderstood the market, how much you need to spend to get a good player, and we as I say, we're still shopping in places where you know that time's been and gone. So that's my disappointment, really, that the money's there and we're not really doing anything with it.
I think something that hasn't really been touched on by anyone is it due to our inexperience doing this? We're not used to being the big fish. We're not used to having all this money and going, well, we can spend it on whoever we want. Is it due to the inexperience at that level of, you, look, don't be scared to spend this money. We have it now. I think it's kind of in that mindset and getting out of the mindset of we can spend. Because, like Jamie said, we're in net profit. There's no reason we couldn't have spent more. So is it due to the experience and maybe a director of football who's worked at a club like a Burnley or a Leeds where they're kind of in between them levels? Maybe they'd offer some more insight into that and getting these fees that may have been a bit more, but for the right caliber of player.
Yeah, I'm sure we've got plenty more we want to say on the transfer window, but just before we move on for a quick break, I just wanted to go to each of you and get you to rank the window out of 10. So obviously 0 being basically nothing. Nothing's happened, nothing, lost everyone, it's all gone wrong. And 10 obviously being the best it possibly can be. So Jamie, we'll start with you, and I just want to, if you could give me a one sentence explanation for why.
It might seem a bit of a high number to a lot of people. I'm going to go with 7, but I think purely because you can't underestimate keeping Mengi, Doughty, and Eli and Kaminsky. I think for all the incomings that I would have loved, you can't underestimate that.
And Lewis, I'll just ask you the same question.
See, I thought my score was quite harsh because I went with 7 as well. So I was like, oh, am I being a bit harsh here? But like Jamie said, we kept some key players. We did bring in some quality players, as Baptiste have said, played at high level. Kraus, that we haven't seen play, has played at Bundesliga and German under 21 level, so he's got to have a decent pedigree about him. Walters looks very good. McGuinness has got a lot of experience. So we've brought in quality. It's just, could we have brought in a bit more?
And then, yeah, Adam, I'll come to you with the same question.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you thought yours was harsh, Lewis, then I've gone 4, and the reason for that is because I know, because that is purely because we've kept some of the players that we've kept. I just think we've missed a huge opportunity to understand the financial position we're in, the advantage we have, the ability to build something that is, a minimum getting us top 6. And I feel like in about 2 weeks, Sheffield United did that. And I think we had the same opportunity for ourselves. Yeah, so I've gone quite harsh, 4 out of 10. It'd be good, obviously good to get everyone else's feedback that's listening, because I feel like they might revoke my season ticket after that. I might change it.
Well, I've gone slightly more than that. I've gone for a 6, and yeah, similar reasons to everyone. Really, I think there's been a lack of ambition shown in the window. We should have spent more. I'm not asking us to go out and spend 20 plus million, but just a couple more additions for a fee would have been nice to see and filled with a bit more confidence that sort of there is that ambition to go straight back up. But it has been saved by keeping hold of the key players, and I think keeping hold of those players was probably the main target for this window.
Yeah, Adam, if you get a phone call from an 01582 number tomorrow, I'll probably block that, because that might be the club just sort of phoning you up and asking you a few questions, I think.
I mean, hopefully we've got the international break, so they might forget about it. Hopefully in the next fortnight.
And on that, we are going to go to a quick break, but we'd love to know your thoughts on the window, your rating, and your one sentence reviews on the transfer window. So if you let us know in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube, or if not, tweet us at Oak Road Hatter and just let us know your rating out of 10 and your one sentence review of the transfer window. As I mentioned, we're going to a quick break, but we'll be back afterwards to talk all about our squad depth and also a little bit about our best 11s. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter. I'm still joined by Jamie Castle, Adam Driscoll, and Lewis Jones. And now we're going to talk a bit about our squad depth and our sort of best 11s as well. So, obviously, the squad has now been confirmed by the club, with squad numbers also confirmed. In case you weren't aware, check out the club's social media, where you'll see that the one number that we weren't sure about, Tom Kraus, has been given that number 8 shirt. There's been a lot of sort of talk about whether we want a back 3 or a back 4. We've obviously there's obviously a few views on social media about what formations could work with the players we've got in our squad. Lewis mentioned the amount of midfielders we now have, so we may be limited with what we can do in a back 3 as well. We're just going to go through sort of the squad depth and who we would play in each area. So if you're listening to an audio only version, check out our social media at Oak Road Hatter, where the squad depth charts will be posted, so you can have a look while you listen. So we'll start in goal, where obviously we've got Kaminsky is quite clearly number one. We've got Tim Krul and James Shea, and there's also the academy goalkeeper Jameson Horlick. I don't think there's any real debate there, unless someone has a really outlandish opinion on our goalkeeping situation. But I think for all of us, it's Thomas Kaminsky in goal. We'll then move to right back. We've got Roel Walters, and when he's back from injury, Hashioka. So we'll start there. Jamie, we'll go straight to you. Who are you playing at right back or right wing back when everyone's fit?
Yeah, I think for me it's pretty clear it's Walters. Yeah, I think had we assigned a replacement right wing back, then I would have liked to have seen Walters on the right of the back three. I think the games that I've seen him, it's probably his better position in this formation. I think for me he's best at right back in a four, but just based on the number of centre halves we have now, especially on that right side of the three, yeah, I think Walters has to play, and I think therefore by default he plays at wing back.
And Lewis and Adam, I'm sure you both agree, but if you don't, I'd love to hear your views.
Yeah, completely agree.
Full agreement.
And now I'm gonna go through the many centre backs we've got, and we'll put them into later on in the part. We'll put them into strongest 11, but just run through what centre backs we've got available to us. So we've got Mengi, Burke, McGuinness, Anderson, Holmes, Bell, and you've also got Chigozie and Francis Clark and Bateson as the three youngsters that have been mentioned around the squad. So obviously Bell starts in a back three on the left, I'm sure, for everyone. He's our only left-footed central defender, but you've also got Joe Johnson who can come in there when necessary. But in terms of the rest of the team, if you're going with a back three, who's your starting central and right-sided centre half, Lewis?
This is a difficult one because I've spoken to you boys about it separately, and I love Mengi defensively, but he's not great on the ball. I think it's fair to say. And on the right side of our back three, I don't really rate him. I think he also kind of showed that against QPR as well. He looks a lot more comfortable as a covering middle centre back in a three, but he's just too good not to start, quite simply. So it's him, and alongside him is our new signing, McGuinness. And then if we was in a four, it would be McGuinness left side of centre half with Mengi pairing him on the right.
And Adam, are you sharing those views?
Yeah, predominantly. If I'm being brutally honest, if it was a back four, I'd struggle to leave out Amari Bell um, as the left side of the two, regardless of what we've spent or will spend on McGuinness. That might not be something that the management team share. So if it was a back four for me, it would be Bell and Mengi. But I don't disagree at all, really, in terms of the back three. I really rate Reece Burke. But yeah, for me, I think what Lewis has said with those three centre halves would be mine as well.
And I'd say the likes of Burke and Anderson are limited by their injury record, so they can't really cement a place in the side. It's interesting what you say about Bell there, because for me, I don't think anyone would play him in the central defence of a back four purely because of his size, and he is more of a left back in a back four. I'm not sure what you think about that, Jamie.
No, I completely agree. I think, I mean, we'll have our preferences. I think for me, I'm definitely on team back four. I think Bell gives us the ability to change in that back four. I mean, you've got obviously Alfred Doughty clearly is very good left back, left wing back. But if we were to go away to someone like a Leeds or a Burnley or Sheffield United, just to be able to have that four defenders in a back four sort of setup that a lot of the elite managers are looking at nowadays. I mean, look at Arsenal's dealings in the summer, right, where they got Calafiori for left back, and then Gabriel, and then Saliba, and then they got Ben White and Timber at right back. That's four out and out defenders in a back four, and I think that seems to be the way elite football is going. So I think to be able to do Walters right back, Bell left back, and then McGuinness and Mengi together as a back four. I just think that adds a lot of strength going away to someone like a Leeds, and even going away to teams like your Oxfords and your Plymouths, right? And okay, they may not cause too much danger going forwards, but it's going to be places that are going to cause a bit of atmosphere, a bit of noise, that they're going to be very much sort of the underdog type team. And just to make sure you make no mistakes defensively is going to be super important. So having that flexibility with Bale at left back, I think is really good, and it also gives the ability to push Doughty further forward, right? I mean, if you look at the back the back squad depth chart, you've only really got Chong on that left wing side. Okay, you've got Brown and Nelson on the right, and either of those could go left if need be, but it gives you the option to bring Doughty forwards a little bit. And then that means in game, if you suddenly go 1-2 up and you're playing 4-2-3-1, you can revert to a back three without doing a substitution, because you can just drop Doughty left wing back and bring Bale in the middle. So it gives a lot of in-game flexibility.
And Doughty is that player that I wanted to look at next. Obviously, I think for everyone, probably most sides in the Championship, he would be their starting left wing back or left back, mainly for what he offers going forward. I think he is one of the best crossers of a ball in the division. He showed it last season as well in the Premier League, but obviously recently he's gone off the boil a bit in terms of his deliveries. But when he's on his day, I'm not sure there's many better deliveries in the division. It's interesting what you say there. In a back four, you could play him further forward, because it's not something we've seen before, but it would be a interesting thing to see us do against a side like a Leeds, and what it can offer us going forward. I was just wondering what you think about him playing further forward, Lewis, and would it waste what he offers defensively?
It's a difficult one because we don't really see him too often 1v1 against players, because you normally have Chong going on the outside of him, going around him, so it gives him that little bit more space. There's no doubt in his quality at delivering the ball. We saw that Adebayo chance in the first half. It was an inch away from being a tap in for him. His crossing is never in doubt. I don't think his dribbling is either. It's just, it'd be adapting to that full on, you are a winger position, you stay forward, you don't come back. We saw it in the QPR game, albeit more of a left mid position, where it was a 4-4-2. But I did like seeing him there. Equally, I like Morris in that left wing position, but we can get onto that later.
And before we move on to that left wing position, we've obviously got to talk about the midfield. So we've got, again, quite a significant squad depth, as Lewis mentioned earlier in the episode. So I will go through it again, because just to clear up what we've got available, we've got Nakamba, Baptiste, Clark, Walsh, Pelly, Tom Krause. There's a bit of a grey area with someone like Nelson, who we're not really sure if he's an attacker or if he's a midfielder, but we'll mark him as an attacker for this purpose. But if you're playing the 3-4-3 or the 5-2-3 that Edwards has tended to go with, who is your starting pairing, Jamie? And if you're going with a back four, what three would you play in there?
I think it's really difficult in that 3-4-3, because as Lewis says, we've got a lot of midfielders in there. I think it's clearly got to be two of Krause, Nakamba, Baptiste. And again, maybe game state dictates which two you put in there, but it'd be really difficult to not put in Baptiste. I think to have a midfield two of Krause and Nakamba, both excellent at the defensive side of play, but I think is almost makes it a bit of like a 7-0-3 formation, right, where you've got two number sixes in that midfield too, and there's not really much sort of front-footed impetus in that midfield. So I think Baptiste gets in, and aside from that, Krause and Nakamba. I mean, Krause has the pedigree. Obviously, he's played 2 seasons in the Bundesliga, so that makes you think that it's probably him. But equally, Nakamba's a very good player, as he showed in the cup game. So yeah, I think it really is a toss of a coin between those two, but it's Baptiste +1.
And if you're playing a three in midfield, which would be with a most likely with a back four, what's the player that comes in alongside those two of those that you're picking?
Well, then it's probably the three of them, right? Where you play a double pivot of Krause and Nakamba, and then bring Baptiste closer to the striker. Is probably what you could do. I mean, you could toy a little bit with square pegs round holes and maybe drop Morris in the number 10 and sort of, because I know he does tend to drop a little bit deep, so you could do that. Obviously, Cauley Woodrow could do that. Jordan Clark could do that. Zach Nelson's attacking midfielder could do that. Even Chong could play in the 10. But if you want a structured midfield, I think having the Canberra and Kraus as that double pivot and then Baptiste just ahead and off the striker, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. But I think, as you say, you just looking at the squad depth charts, there's a lot of central players in that team.
And I just wanted to expand on what Jamie said there about playing a double pivot with Kraus and Nakamba, then with Baptiste in there with them as well. Do you think that Adam lacks anything going forward?
Good question. Potentially, yeah, potentially. I don't know. I've not really seen too much of Baptiste yet to know whether he's going to become that like box to box, which I think you probably need. You need someone to be really keeping up with the forwards and almost like a, dare I say it, someone we've just let go, like a Luke Berry, who's in the right place at the right time. If he's going to play those two, deep lying midfielders, so I think it could potentially work. I mean, I share very similar thoughts. I don't mind the concept of Kraus and Nakamba in a two because I feel like it gives, if you are playing two centre halves, it gives that little bit more protection for them, where Walters and Doughty could still operate as wing backs and get into midfield. So I don't mind that so much, but I think if it was a three, it would be the three that Jamie said, and then you'd be, potentially pushing up Baptiste ahead of the other two.
And Lewis, obviously, I'm sure you have something to say about the many midfielders who you were keen to point out on earlier in the episode. Is there anyone you'd bring in for one of those?
Jamie touched on it and said if we played the 3-4-3, Nakamba and Kraus, similar views. I don't think they really work. I spoke to a Mainz fan about Kraus. Honestly, I'd never seen the fella play, and he said he's very much a six. And as we know firsthand, Nakamba's very much a six. So the 3-4-3, you need someone that can, like a Baptiste, is perfect really, who can do that box to box. If I was going with a three, I would go, like I said, a double pivot of Nakamba and Kraus. And I know I discussed this earlier. I would go with Nelson in the 10. I am a fan of playing players in their favourite positions. And throughout his youth career, from what I've seen at Luton, Nelson played in the 10. So play him there, see how it goes. But Clark is a very good shout for number 10. He can link up the play, he can dribble. He's also got an occasional eye for goal. So I think with a three, it's the two of Nakamba Kraus. Then for number 10, really, take your pick.
And you mentioned they're playing players in their preferred position, which is when it gets a little bit complicated up front, just with the formation that we've played recently. I'm sure if you're new to the podcast and you haven't listened to any of our other episodes, we've had a lot to say about Morris being pushed wider. But I just want to go through the strikers we've got before we move on to some of the wide areas, because we actually do have a lot of options in that front area. So Adebayo and Morris are the obvious options to play up front if we're playing a two, but Morris has been moved around onto the wide areas just to facilitate other formations. But we've also got Joe Taylor, who did so much out on loan last season and has had fans calling for him to be in the side. And we've retained him despite the heavy links going on loan. We've got Cauley Woodrow, who everyone's also got opinions on, but we won't discuss them. And he would always put a shift in when he comes on. And then also you've got someone who we've not seen in a long time because of injury. You've got Jacob Brown, who predominantly played in wide areas because he was playing around Morris and Eli at times, but he can also play up front as well. So we actually do have quite a bit of depth in those attacking areas. If we're playing we'll say if we're playing a front two or a 3-4-3, which two of those would you be starting? Presumably we're all going to have the same idea for the front two. But Adam, where would you go with that?
Front two, 100% Morris and Adebayo. Old school, just the way it used to be, and yeah, for me, just nailed on.
And I'm sure everyone agrees with that. If you speak now or forever hold your peace on that. But there is then one more player one more position available in the side, and you've also got someone like Chong, and you've got Nelson to come into the side as well, who we've not listed yet. So, who is your player that you're adding into that team to finish it off, Jamie?
I think assuming you play Eli Morris, it's got to be Chong because he's I guess the headline player, the signing that we obviously paid a decent chunk of money for last summer, a player that has had a lot of championship games and has looked very good for this level. So I think based on the current structure, you can see why that three is being put together. But yeah, I think something does need to change. I think as we said, we're not putting players in their preferred position. I'm not sure why Morris is being shoved out wide, and I'm not sure if the answer is to drop one of them or play both, but maybe shift it around. I'm a bit surprised because during spells last season, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Adebayo played out on the left with Doughty a little bit, and then you had Morris centrally, and then you had Chong on the right. And okay, Chong's left-footed, but he then on the right was able to come into his left and I mean we've seen it firsthand on the other end of it. He's got a pretty good shot on him, isn't he, in terms of striking the ball from distance. So I'm not sure why it's been rejuggled to put Morris on the right, Chong on the left, and Adebayo through the middle. You've basically all three positions last season that they played in are now different. So that for me is slightly confusing. I think Adebayo's got the agility to be able to play out on the left. Ultimately, you can use his height against a fullback. I think he's a very good centre forwards, but I think against a very good centre half, he struggles in the air. Whereas Morris is better in that situation. So if you can get him 1v1 against a potentially shorter fullback, I think he'll have a lot more joy. So for me, in the 3-4-3, okay, the squad depth chart doesn't show it, but I'd play Eli left, Morris middle, and Chong right. And the chart's been done based on what we've done so far in terms of sort of track record. But for me, I think it's wrong. I think, yeah, Eli left, Morris middle, Chong right. And then you've got Taylor that can come in either on the left for Eli for a bit more pace, or in the middle for Morris for a bit more pace in the middle. You've got Jacob Brown that can play on the right. Zach Nelson can play in a free somewhere as well. So I don't know why we've deviated from what worked fairly well in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think as we spoke about there, that will be a front three. But I look at Morris and I go, he was a left winger for Barnsley predominantly. Morris, Chong played on the right wing for the majority of his youth career and the startings of his career, and Adebayo's a striker. Why is Morris on the right, Chong on the left, and Adebayo in the middle? That's the only one that makes sense for me. I think play these players where they're meant to play. I believe it was the Brighton game where we smashed them. I believe Morris is on the left, Adebayo is in the middle, and I think Chong was on the right. But Morris he's so 2-footed. He's so much more comfortable playing on the left because if he cuts in, he can get a shot away on his right, which will probably be lethal. If not, he's more than good enough to go down the wing with his left foot. So I'm not sure if we're just overcomplicating it a bit and just saying, well, let's try this. It hasn't really worked as we've seen so far. We've not scored many goals, so something needs to change. It's not the personnel because they're all good enough. Morris got 20 goals in the league last time out. Adebayo got 10 in the Premier League last year. They can score goals. It's just getting it to work.
I think for me, I agree with the guys. The personnel is absolutely spot on. But I think about one of the first times I saw Chong, and he was tearing us to pieces for Birmingham, and he was doing it straight through the middle of the pitch. So I would like to see us explore a potential where Chong is the 10 and Morris and Adebayo are central. I absolutely agree. I think Morris has to be central. It's where he does all his good work. It's where he backs into defenders and brings other people into play. But I don't necessarily think the three up front for me doesn't have to be too wide of one. It can be Adebayo and Morris in their prime position, and Chong in that hole. And I don't think we will see it because I think Edwards wants the wide forwards, but I would like to see that potentially happen at some point.
Just before we finish, I just wanted to touch on one last player. And I did briefly mention him as we were going through sort of the depth and exposition, but we have been limited to how much we can see, and that is Jacob Brown. I just wanted to get your thoughts on where you think his best position is and what he brings to the side once he's back. I'm not actually sure when he is back, but because he's been out for so long. But what does he offer when he comes in, Jamie?
Yeah, a lot. I think we saw last season with obviously the goal against Palace. I think I think he was one of, if not the best forward pressers in the Championship. Sort of the year before we signed him, in terms of off the ball, sort of winning the balls. We're winning balls high at the pitch in the final thirds, and I think that's what we're lacking a little bit up top. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the goals we conceded against Burnley, right? I mean, one of them was obviously from Lucas Pires on the left, who was in acres in space, and then found, was it Brownhill in beyond, right? And I think if Jacob Brown's in that situation, he presses a lot faster, gets higher, and stops the ball in behind in the first place. So I think, yeah, going forwards he offers a lot, but I think defensively he offers us a lot as well. And I think whether we play that back four like a 4-2-3-1 or whether we play a 3-4-3, I certainly can see him coming in on the right. And if we keep doing this, Morris on the right, Eli in the middle, and Chong on the left situation, then I can see at some point Morris or Eli getting dropped for Brown, and having the other one in the middle with then Brown on the right. Because I think he just adds a lot more on that right, more than anyone else we have really. Obviously got Zach Nelson, but yeah, I think he could be a game changer for us when he's back fit.
And I was just having a look at when we last saw him, and he's actually not featured for us since we played Newcastle away from home when we drew 4-4 because of that injury issue he's had. And something I noticed when he played for us, and it might have been completely under the radar and it's just me picking up random things, but he was actually quite dangerous in the air from the long balls up from the keeper. And I don't think that's something we've really done recently at all. But do you think him coming in for someone like Chong, maybe if Edwards fancies playing a different style, would mean that we can play a different way from the keeper, Lewis?
I think to an extent, yes, but we've got two big players up there anyway in Morris and Adebayo. So I'm not sure that's the issue. I don't think that's his biggest strength either, but he's kind of a hybrid of Chong and, say, Morris. He has that a bit more technical ability, a bit more pace about him. Obviously, Chong has a bit more, but then he has that more physical side to him. As Jamie mentioned, he presses well as well. He's an ideal Edwards player. He's aggressive, he's strong, he's quick. That's exactly what Edwards likes. So I think having him back adds that competition, which might kick our forwards into gear a little bit more. And it's just that option from the bench. We don't really have anyone like him. A Woodrow he likes the space, drops into holes and plays it off. Taylor's very much sit on the last man, getting behind. We don't really have anyone like him. So having him back would be massive. I think, obviously, we've not had too many updates, but I believe it was mentioned just after the international break. Equally, with our injury updates, they're normally about 3 months off. So it could not be until January that we see him.
And that's the last thing I wanted to touch on. Just before we go, I'd love to get everyone listening to let us know what their best 11 would be from what we've got available. We'd love to know the formation you want us to play as well. And you can be outlandish as possible with the formation. It could be something we've never seen before, but we'd love to know. So if you comment on this video your best 11 and the formation you want us to play on YouTube, or if you tweet us at @OakRoadHatter, or send us or comment on the video when it gets uploaded. We'd love to know your thoughts. But from myself, from Jamie, from Adam and Lewis, thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the international break. It will be back quicker than you know. Thank you.